Welcome back to Harbor. For months now, we've been watching the growing gap between the establishment Republican Party and the Tea Party wings of that party. The Tea Party types are now the party's dominant force, of course. They have little use for establishment Republicans who preach moderation and compromise. Well, here's what David Brooks wrote in the New York Times today. Quote, "It's probably futile to try to change current Republicans. It's smarter to build a new wing of the Republican Party, one that can compete in the Northeast and mid-Atlantic states, in the upper Midwest, along the West Coast as well. It could be filled with people who recoiled at President Obama's second inaugural address because of its excessive faith in centralized power, but who don't share the absolute anti-government story of the current GOP. Would a coastal and Midwestern GOP sit easily with the Southern and Western one? No. But majority parties are usually coalitions of the incompatible. This is really the only chance Republicans have. The answer is it's going to build the only way to build a second GOP, and that is the answer. Anyway, good question for my two guests, both excellent on the center right. Michael Steele, former chair of the Republican Party, now an MSNBC contributor, and Bob Costa, Washington editor for the Great National Review. Gentlemen, you're reasonable men. The Democratic Party for years was an unbelievably absurd coalition. Northern liberals, minorities where they were able to vote, not part of the country, Southern segregationists, and then they all put together for people like Adlai Stevenson even. Right. And certainly for Roosevelt and Harry Truman and all the rest, and Wilson. Can the Republican Party rebuild itself to get a majority by building a coalition where they don't all agree with each other, where you have the Saudi busters, the rural people, plus the more, if you will, this will drive people crazy, sophisticated suburbanites.
Yes, I think they absolutely can. And for going back to my days as a county chairman in Prince George's County, Maryland, to being national chairman, I preached that same thing. Northeastern Republicans are not Southern Republicans, aren't Midwestern Republicans, aren't Western Republicans. They all wear a different hat, but they wear them in their own style.
And all politics is local.
All politics is local, and I think the more the party recognizes that this is not about a national Republican Party, but a coalition of independent, minded individuals who happen to be Republican in some cases, you may say.
But what about all those moderates? They're told they can join the party and be part of the coalition. You know, that's nice, Bob. But if they're not pro-life, if they're not against gay marriage, if they don't buckle to the rural Republican Party, the Tea Party point of view, they ain't ever going to be on the national ticket. So why would they join a party that wouldn't accept them as a member? And certainly not as a leader.
It's a fair question, something the Republicans are going to have to grapple with over the next few years.
Well, how do you grapple with it?
You and I both grew up in the Philadelphia suburbs. My big question is the party going to elevate leaders who come from the Northeast? Is a Chris Christie, for example, going to be able to be a true national voice in leading the party in the coming years? Or is it just going to be Republicans from other parts of the country, the deep...
Well, wait a minute, I know the answer, because we had governors like Tom Ridge, a war veteran, combat veteran of Vietnam, worked his way through Harvard, admirable person. Right. He wasn't right on abortion rights. He didn't go anywhere nationally because Cheney zapped him when he went up for VP. So the guys, you name me a guy. Now, of course, Christie's okay because he's pro-life, supposedly. But all the other guys in the Northeast aren't, so they're not eligible.
It's a fair point.
I know, I keep making fair points. So you got to answer that.
National Review had a big summit over the weekend in Washington. We had a lot of different people come and speak, pro-choice people, pro-life people. Social issues, economic issues. Republicans are grappling with all these questions. Okay. You've got to talk about taxes. Where are Republicans going to be open on revenue, on gay marriage, and on abortion? Are Republicans...
What's the answer?
The answer is unsure.
Okay, let's take a look. Here's Bobby Jindal, who's really got an ambition going, but this guy's burning down here. He took on his own party last week at an RNC meeting when he said it was time for the stupid party that stupid party talk to end. Let's listen.
We've got to stop being the stupid party. And I'm serious. It's time for a new Republican Party that talks like adults. It's time for us to articulate our plans and our visions for America in real terms. It's no secret we had a number of Republicans that damaged the brand this year with offensive and bizarre comments. I'm here to say we've had enough of that.
Murdoch and Aiken, he was talking about the rape candidates. Anyway, last night, Karl Rove, who's now, by the way, an umpire, he agreed with Jindal and said Republicans must have more than an anti-Obama message. Let's listen to the oracle. The architect, Karl Rove.
I think he's right. He was talking about Todd Aiken of Missouri and Richard Murdoch of Indiana and their terrible comments on abortion. The Republican Party can't simply be in mindless opposition to Barack Obama. It has to offer a vision of the future that is attractive and compelling for Americans to associate with.
Well, the problem is that the vision Jindal and Rove are talking about hasn't changed. Only their messaging has. While Jindal talks a good game, Paul Krugman of the New York Times pointed out yesterday that Jindal's proposing eliminating Louisiana's income tax, which is paid primarily by the wealthy, and replace it with a sales tax designed to hit the poor and the working poor the hardest. Now, when you start going through regressive taxes, if you're a Republican, you're doing the same old Hoover stuff. Tax the people that get hit the hardest by economic recession and exempt the top people who make incomes.
Well, but
big incomes.
But that's not necessarily been borne out in states like Texas and New Hampshire and elsewhere that don't have a state income tax, that do have a higher sales tax. So I get the,
if you have a lot of tourism,
I get the partisan line that you want. I think Louisiana has a bit of tourism. So the fact of the matter is, Bobby Jindal represents, I think, as Susana Martinez does and others, this next generation of Republican leaders out there who are doing it. They're creating
Jindal's message.
They're creating the laboratory in the states, which is why I go back to my point that this is not about a national messaging. This is finding and accepting Republicans where they are.
So you buy this as an intellectual who writes for the National Review, which is intellect. You buy the fact the Republican Party can become a coalition party, not a homogeneous right-wing party.
I think the Republican Party...
Can you answer that question, yes or no?
Yes, I think the Republican Party can succeed. But if you listen to Bobby Jindal's speech, he's asking a big question. Too often, he says, the party's becoming the fiscal conservative party. He's talking too much about budgets. He's saying Republicans aren't going to back away on their position on taxes, talk more about growth, more about tax cuts, less about austerity.
Okay, one way to kill prosperity, by the way, is tax people for what they spend. That is the dumbest thing in the world. Raise their sales tax. So if you save your little money, you keep it in your pocketbook, right? You have more money. If you tax spending, you're bringing down consumption. Anyway, let's take a look at here's Jindal and Chris Christie and Marco Rubio, who are thinking about bringing the party together at least. And then there's this. Take a look at Glenn Beck. He's dressed up as a doctor here, pronouncing the Republican establishment dead. Let's watch Glenn Beck.
Here's what the media and the president still don't understand. We're celebrating the death of the establishment GOP right along with them. Yeah. I've got a cake and hats and like party streamers and everything today because they're dead. The GOP hasn't stuck to its guns or its policies or its principles in I don't know how long. All they are is about winning. Who should be in the tent? We need a bigger tent. That's the wrong angle. While the elephant may be dying. And it's not dying, it's dead. What isn't dying in America is personal responsibility.
Is he part of your crowd, Glenn Beck? Is he part of the Republican Big Tent, that guy? That train wreck?
If he wants to, look, see, I'm not going to make a judgment on what brings and motivates people to join the party.
But is he in or out?
I don't know. I don't get to make that judgment.
Okay.
He gets to make that decision for himself. If he wants to pronounce the party's dead, that's fine for him. I would have my issues.
I don't think he's a member of any
You are hearing this from a lot of conservatives. They're happy the party's struggling.
You like him?
No, I'm not like Glenn Beck, but they want to see a revival.
I don't like him. I know how to make an answer work. No, I don't like him. That's right. But you won't answer the question.
I did answer the question.
Is he part of your party or not?
What's his party registration?
He seems like he doesn't even want to be part of the party.
He doesn't want to be a part of it.
Who do you vote for, Mitt Romney or Obama?
You have to ask him that. I don't know.
I think I know. Anyway, I think he voted for Mitt Romney. If he didn't, call me up. Anyway, thank you, Michael Steele and Robert Costa. Up next, who's Ted Cruz to criticize